Welcome to Moffett and Money. I'm Clay Moffett, and this channel it will be a regular series of videos designed to try to help you become more informed. I've seen a lot of the currently existing finance videos out there, and I think there's just a need to do a better job of trying to inform, educate people of what's going on in the market, what's going on in the economy, with the goal of trying to make them a better informed investor so that they can make better investment decisions. The topics will be general on finance, on the markets, different markets, bond, stock, crypto, with the goal of understanding what moves them, how to evaluate them, how to manage your risk, because there's always risk. It doesn't matter if you're in a bank CD, there's always risk. And we'll look at that. We'll talk about um, a lot of the different risks that investors are exposed to and how to manage it. The goal ultimately is to make you a better investor and make better decisions over your future. I've spent 35 years in the market, managing portfolios, trading derivatives, structuring Reg D offerings, private placements. A lot of people would call them tax shelters back in the day. And also, through it all, managed to earn my PhD and have been working as a finance professor for the past 10, 15 years. So I've spent my life in relatively complex and even theoretical areas. And my goal is to try to seek to, clarify this complexity, to, as we used to say back home, shuck it down to the cob. I believe this is a practical world. I believe I can only count on what I earn. I believe in work. I believe in hard work. I believe in education. I believe in training my mind and my hands to work skillfully. And so that will be kind of the underlying goal or attitude of this channel. I feel we're very privileged. We have a great opportunity to participate in the markets, in a wide variety of markets. It's almost too many choices, and that can be part of the confusion. But they do present a number of different opportunities. And so we will spend some time going through those and trying to clear up some of the confusion surrounding, what the markets offer in terms of potential and risk. Better understand the terminology that informs and try to clarify the complex. We're going to start off on cryptocurrency, a relatively hot topic. Get a lot of questions on it. Actually started teaching a course on it. And it's a topic of a lot of source of a lot of confusion, a lot of extremely inaccurate information, a lot of speculation, um, and overall just kind of an object of love, hate, derision, uh, most any kind of emotion that you can imagine. It's probably the most attention centered market of all the different markets right now. So we'll start off with crypto, and I've seen some other videos out there uh, talking about crypto, and they start off with a lot of the technical aspects and try to explain to you how the blockchain works, that sort of thing. We can get into that, but that's not really the goal here. I believe talking about that type of detail doesn't really benefit you as an investor, and it's even the wrong place to begin. You've first got to understand what money is, what makes currency valuable or worthless. The better you understand that, the better you can understand the crypto markets and whether or not that's a market you ought to or want to participate in. That understanding will help you make a better decision, even if, everybody knows it's a very volatile market. Bitcoin's down to a third of what it was 6 months ago. So that scares a lot of people off. But the people who understand these markets, who have been in them and who have a good understanding of what money is, maybe don't share that same sentiment. Why? Well, understanding that helps you make better decisions over the noise and the din of everything and people screaming everything going on in the world today. So let's start off with the question, what is money? Money is first and foremost a solution to a problem. At its simplest, it's oftentimes described as a medium of exchange. For example, say you've got a bread maker and a car manufacturer. Bread maker wants a car. Well, the bread maker may charge, let's say, $1 for each one of his loaves, and the car maker $30,000 for his car. Solution could be relatively simple. The bread maker can just load up 30,000 loaves, take them to the car maker, and do a barter exchange, just exchange one good for the other. The purest form of free enterprise. But the car maker probably will decline that opportunity because what's he going to do with 30,000 loaves? They'll rot before he can eat them all. He doesn't have a place to store them. Transporting them obviously is a problem. So a lot of times barter is an impractical solution. And that's where money comes in. They use the medium, the dollar. It makes the transaction easy, convenient. It makes the transaction possible. They both know and can easily convert their labors or goods they produce into dollar values. They know what the dollar buys. They can relate their own time and efforts to the value of that dollar. So it makes a very good and relatively stable medium for common exchange. They can value their efforts and their purchases accordingly. They know its value, they trust its value, and trust it to maintain its value, which is something different altogether. So that's what most don't understand about money, is that it is a solution to a problem. Now, in order to be used as a solution to the problem of exchange, money has to meet certain criteria, three main criteria. I mean, if you look through history, there's a lot of things which have tried to serve as money and they have failed. Well, why? What makes money money? What makes money successful? Well, there's certain characteristics, three main characteristics. First of all, it has to be commonly valued and easily transported. The bread maker knows the value of the dollar. The car manufacturer knows the value of the dollar. They can easily translate their labors into a price, a value of those dollars. It's also relatively easily transported, especially today with credit cards or whatever. But historically, you can carry large or small amounts of cash on your person in order to affect a trade. Money, the second main characteristic of money is it has to be sound. And what I mean by sound is that you can store value in it. It will hold its value, which just, I mean, buy the same amount of goods or services over time, sometime into the future. What good would it be if the bread maker converted his bread into some currency over a month or two to sell enough loaves, and then went to the car maker, and the car maker saw the amount offered and wouldn't accept it because it didn't hold its value. It was worth less at that time. It didn't carry that value forward into the future. So sound money has the ability to move the value over time and space. Third characteristic, it must be scalable, divisible, able to accommodate transactions of varying sizes. For example, I can convert $1 into 100 pennies. Well, I can buy the same thing with 100 pennies that I can $1. So each penny has a value, has the same pro rata value as other units, quarters, dimes, etc. They will all purchase the pro rata amount of the value of the dollar that they denominated in. Now, this isn't just kind of an academic exercise. This is how you understand whether or not cryptocurrency is for you. Because these three characteristics, having that kind of sound money that carries value forward in time and space, is critical to a viable, stable, prospering economic system. Is why some things serve as money and some don't. Like I said before, you store wealth in money when you hold it. You transfer your labors for a certain amount of money, certain sum of money, and you trust that this sum of money will buy the same goods and services the next day, next week, that you hold it, whether it's in a bank checking account or in your pocket. Sound money, this ability to carry wealth into the future, has a very unique aspect to it in that it allows people to think about the future. The bread maker can save his money for weeks or months in order to save up to buy a car. You can save your money for weeks, months, years in order to pay for college for the kids, for retirement, for medical bills, whatever. But if that money won't carry that value forward into the future, what's the use of saving it? That incentive is greatly reduced. I think we can all agree on that. So saving and investing is a key to a successful future. That's it. Saving and investing is the key to a successful future. Growing economies and the advance of civilization. None of that happens if we don't have saving and investment. Now, money serves ultimately as an information system, a measurement system. It allows trade, investment, capital formation, hence innovation. And innovation is ultimately what advances societies. Look at computers, for example. Um, computers advance society? You probably could make a pretty good argument that they've done more harm than good in some ways. But if we look, we have access to a lot more information. We have a lot more ability to do um, complex calculations and manage tons of data more efficiently. And we can do it at a much cheaper price, particularly compared to 5, 10, 20, 30 years ago, 50 years ago. So there's been a lot of innovation in tech and computers that have, let's say, improved our life, even though we may abuse them and maybe not all to the good. A few other things about money. Money has a supply and demand curve. And, if you mention this, a lot of people's eyes tend to roll over. But I want to show you something. I want you to understand this. So if we look here, this is a simple graph. I love graphs. I mean, I'm a guy. A picture's worth 1,000 words. And so when I look at a graph, I'm looking at it like there's a story it's trying to tell me. So what is this story? And here I've got two curves. We'll call them curves, the red and the blue. The red one is the demand curve. The blue one is the supply curve. We've got the two axes. The vertical axis is price. Horizontal axis is quantity, P and Q. Now, supply and demand curve always exist for any commodity. Now, people are used to thinking of them in terms of goods produced or wheat, corn, those kind of things. But money is just a commodity. It has a supply and demand curve. And to understand the supply and demand curve, you have to look kind of at even though they're together, you look at each curve independently. For example, supply. If here right at the intersection, I've got an equilibrium, what we call an equilibrium state. The goods produced equal the demand at that price. Okay. So If I look just at the blue curve, the supply curve, if price goes up, what happens to supply? All everything else equal. Well, supply will increase. There's an opportunity to make more profit, and manufacturers will strive to try to produce more product in order to capture that profit. But if we look at the demand curve, as price goes up, what happens to demand? Well, demand drops. The quantity demanded drops. So you've got two different forces working in the market that are sometimes kind of at odds with each other. So money is like any other commodity. It has a supply and demand curve of its own. Its shape is a little bit different than what you see. It's more vertical because the supply is controlled by the Federal Reserve. However, the you know basic fundamentals remain the same. It's like any other commodity. It's more valuable if the supply is limited. If the supply increases, then the interest rates drop. Okay. The idea is to try to stimulate more consumption, more spending, but that obviously hasn't worked out the way many of the academicians figured or wanted. Its value falls. It purchases less goods for each dollar. The old adage is you've got more money chasing the same amount of goods. That's a phenomenon called inflation, and that's what we're experiencing now. The value of money is dropping. Each dollar purchases less and less as inflation gets higher and higher. For people on fixed incomes, that's extremely painful. For people looking to retire, your savings are eroded. You're facing ultimately a lower lifestyle in the future, even more so if you include taxes. A lot of people don't think about what taxes do to their return. For example, if you had $100 invested and a 10% return, you would receive $10. Well, so people would say, my return is 10%. That's a good return. Problem is, taxes may take 40% of that. Federal, state, sales taxes, all that kind of stuff may take 40% of what you earn on average. Most people don't understand, but the average worker in this country, the average worker works the months of January, February, March, and most of April, somewhere around April the 20th, 21st, just to pay their taxes. So before they pay a dollar of food or rent or clothing or health, anything for their family, January, February, March, nearly a third of their money comes out for taxes each year. So if you've got a 10% return, 40% of it goes in taxes. That leaves you with a net after-tax return of 6%. Well, right now inflation is 9 or 10%. And I believe that's a little low, but nonetheless, it's what CPI is, the way it's calculated. So if goods are costing 9 or 10% more a year, but you're only earning 6% after taxes, that's a 3% difference. That's a 3% per year loss in purchasing power. I remember when I was consulting, doing portfolios, I didn't normally work with many individuals, but had a priest call me up one day and said on occasion, I hear you do some pro bono work. I've got this little old sweet lady, member of the church, wondered if you would try to help her out. She's about to retire and doesn't know what to do. And I said, sure, I'll be glad to. And so a few days later, this little lady came in the office. Sweet dear soul, just had her hair done, was a bright strawberry red. She was so proud of it. And so she sat down and told me her story. Her husband was killed in Korea. during the war. She was a bride of about 18 or 19 years old and was given by the Department of Defense the $10,000 death benefit. Now, some people say $10,000, that's nothing, but you have to remember this was 1950, I want to say 56. The years kind of run by. But anyway, somewhere in the 50s. And back then it would buy 3 small houses. So it was a decent sum in the day. Well, after the funeral, one of her neighbors came to her and said, Molly, I know you to be a very conservative woman, and I know you don't want to take any risk. So I can put this in a product that will guarantee you the principal, keep the principal safe. And so it sounded good to her. She trusted him. So she put her $10,000 in this 30-year fixed annuity at 1.25%. 1.25%. Now, this money earned 1.25% during the 60s and the 80s when we had 2 of the greatest bull markets in history. Long story short, she was retiring. She had worked as a secretary in a father-son law office and straight typing, really no skills, really didn't have a retirement plan. So what she had coming to her at this time in mid-80s was a $232 Social Security benefit plus this money. Well, the check the company was going to write her was for $17,614. That's what she had to live on. This lady had 2 great loves in her life, having her hair done, and she had a little poodle that she adored. I'm the guy that got to tell her she couldn't afford to do either anymore because she couldn't afford food or rent. To give you a comparison, if she had taken this $10,000 and just invested it in a mediocre stock mutual fund, earned 12%, she would have had roughly $660,000. If she'd invested it in a good mutual fund, and remember, this was 20 great years, 30 great years of in the market overall, and earned 15%, she'd have had like $1.4 million, if I remember. Instead, she had 17,000 plus $232 a month. Well, long story short, was able to work something out with the church where she was able to get her hair done once a month, keep her dog, keep her apartment, and buy food. But she should not have been in that position. That's what is important about this is there's nobody that will look after your money and your future like you do. And in order to do it to the best of your ability, you need good information to make good decisions. So kind of the motivation behind this channel is that what I refer to as little old redheaded lady. I love that woman. Kind of she died 10, 15 years later, kind of stayed in touch with her, but she was a sweet, sweet spirit. So money inflation, that's a big deal. So how money holds its value going into the future is critical. Now, economists oftentimes will talk about hard or soft money, and that's really what they are meaning. So if we want to look at hard or soft money, let me point this out first. We were talking about different types of currency. This is actually an ancient form of currency called a rhinestone. Island in the Pacific, Yap Island. The natives there use these huge stones, and they may weigh 2 to 4 tons. For currency, they would obviously not be carried around. They would remain in a central place in the community, and then the ownership would be transferred and declared at community meetings. but it worked as a very stable and reliable form of currency for them for quite a long time. So, we've come a long way since then. But we're talking about money holding its value. Here, I've got a picture of the money supply called M2. There was a prior calculation called M3 that I liked a little bit better, but the Federal Reserve quit determining it, calculating it. But this gives us a good idea of what's happened to the money supply since 1960 through last month. And you can see it's increasing, it's growing, and it should as the economy grows. Remember that supply and demand thing. If you have more people being produced, population growing, you have greater demand for money. So if you just held the supply fixed, well, that creates problems of its own. The price goes through the roof. So you do want kind of a gradual increase in the supply of money to grow consistent with the demand in growth created by the growth in population. But you can tell here at the end, it just goes nearly vertical. And here's that area blown up. And you can see here it going vertical through some of the stimulus. And then even the slope of the line, taking you back to high school algebra here, or geometry probably, the slope of the line steepens. And that's really what creates inflation. Inflation is always, always, always a monetary event where the supply of money keeps increasing. And I mentioned earlier, the Federal Reserve controls the supply of money, but it's also part due to government spending. They have to produce enough to cover government spending. So that's really the problem. That's why we're having such high inflation now. This pic tells you why inflation is occurring. So now that we have a better understanding of currency, we can better ask the question, how does crypto address or even answer these problems? Remember, currency is a solution to a problem. Well, we are creating certain problems in this economy with the currency. It may be time to look at some adjustments or changes to that. Can crypto possibly answer that? Well, to find that answer, you'll just have to tune into the next video for more. If you will, hit the like and subscribe buttons, turn on the notifications, do all the YouTube-y kind of stuff, and I'll continue to explain what actually is crypto and why it should or should not be in your portfolio. I'm also interested in looking for ideas of interest to you for future discussions. I've got a few ideas looking at the the Fed itself, how the involvement in the markets is shaping and moving the markets. Some people would say manipulating. I would probably be one of those. Um, the government deficit, what are the problems there? Future impacts. Also would refer you to my Twitter page. It's just created, Moffett on Money. But here I will be throwing out certain obviously short blurbs, ideas, kind of daily comments on the market. So if you're interested, hit a follow on Moffett on Money on Twitter. Feel free to comment or DM me on Twitter. And I look forward to, trying to answer some of your questions. My time is up. I thank you for yours.